Hello friends, so welcome back to my channel Mukesh English, and this is Mukesh Soni. Friends, in this video we are going to analyze a very famous poem titled Virtue by the famous poet George Herbert. George Herbert is a famous British poet, orator and the priest at the Church of England, and this poem is in the syllabus of first semester BA General English under Bangalore University, and the new syllabus, that is the SEP syllabus. So before we go through the poem, we'll see here a few questions and we'll try to find out those questions answers at the end of the poem. So when I just went through this poem, I found those questions. For example, what do you think makes something beautiful? Then how do you feel when something beautiful comes to an end? Do you believe that everything in nature has a beginning and an end as well? What is the difference between outer beauty and inner qualities like kindness or virtue? How do you think a person can live on after death? So these are the questions, answers we will try to find out once we analyze the poem. And the last question, do you think virtue is important in life? Yes, we'll try to find out. So let's have a look at the poem's outline here. Let's have a look at the poem's outline. Sweet day, the poet says, sweet day, so cool, so calm, so bright. The bridal of the earth and sky, the dew shall weep, they fall tonight, for thou must die. Sweet rose, whose hue angry and brave bids the rash gazer wipe his eye, thy root is ever in its grave, and thou must die. Sweet spring, full of sweet days and roses, a box where sweets compacted lie, my music shows you, my music shows you have your closes, and all must die. Only a sweet and virtuous soul, like seasoned timber, never dies. But though the whole world turn to coal, then chiefly lives. So virtue means good quality, bridal means marriage, thy means your, thou means you, hue means shade, and rash gazer means one who looks fixedly, virtuous means noble. So now we'll try to analyze this poem line by line, and let's know the introduction to this poem. Virtue, the famous poem by George Herbert, is a short yet profound poem which reflects on the transient nature of earthly beauty and the lasting value of a virtuous soul. Through the vivid descriptions of the day, the rose, the spring, each symbolizing the beauty and the life's fleeting moments, Herbert contrasts the impermanence with the eternal. While natural beauty eventually fades and dies, the poem suggests that a virtuous soul, like seasoned wood, remains forever unbroken, even when the world around it perishes. So let's try to understand this poem line by line. So stanza number 1, which talks about the day. The poet says, sweet day, so cool, so calm, so bright, the bridal of the earth and the sky. So George Herbert, the poet, describes a beautiful day as peaceful and perfect, and he compares this beautiful day to a wedding between the earth and the sky, which emphasizes its harmony and serenity. So the imagery of bridal here suggests a kind of a union of nature's elements, which is emphasizing a kind of perfection and grace. In the next line, the poet says here, the dew shall weep thy fall tonight, for thou must die. So what does it mean? Here, the poet reminds us that even the most beautiful day will come to an end. The dew are something like the tears. Dew means tears. The dew will weep as the day dies, symbolizing the fleeting nature of time. So, what does the poet mean in this stanza here? No matter how perfect, how beautiful the day may be, but it will eventually come to an end. So, this shows the temporary nature of everything in the life. This shows the temporary nature of everything in the life. The day has to come to an end. So this is what is emphasized in the stanza number 1. Now we are moving to the stanza number 2, which talks about rose, which talks about the beauty of rose, which talks about the fate of the rose. Here the poet says, sweet rose, whose whose hue angry, whose hue angry and brave, bids the rash gazer wipe his eye. Hue means, what's the meaning of hue? Means shade, right? Gazer, rash gazer means something looks very fixedly. So let's see what is the explanation. So the rose is described as a bold and very striking, with a color so intense that it forces someone to rub their eyes. It is so shining, it is so striking that when you look at, you will rub the eyes. So there's a beauty of the poem, there's a beauty of the rose. So this shows the rose powerful beauty. The poet says, thy root is ever in its grave, and thou must die. So what does the poet says here? Despite its beauty, the rose is rooted in the ground, which symbolizes that connection to death. So, like everything in the nature, everything else in the nature, even the rose will wither and die. Even the rose also has to die. So, the poet would like to mention here the beauty of the rose is very captivating, but it is always a temporary. It reminds us that life is always connected to death. Anything which is beautiful, which will never remain beautiful, it has to die, it has to wither like the rose. Now we are moving to the stanza number 3, which talks about the spring season. And the poet says, sweet spring, full of sweet days and roses, a box where sweets compacted lie. So the spring season always symbolizes the abundance, joy, renewal, with something like a treasure which is filled with all the delights. So the spring is like a treasure, like a box which consists all the sweet memories, all the sweet days, all the joys, right? So this captures the essence of life's fleeting pleasure and the richness of the season. Richness of the season, that is the spring season. My music shows you have your closes and all must die. So even music, which represents harmony and joy, even it also has an end. So similarly, spring and all its beauty will come to an end as everything in life does. So even you can't stop the spring season. Spring season has to pass, right? So what does the poet would like to convey here? The poet says that though spring season shows fullness of life, joy, charm, like all other season, but this season has also, this season has to die. The new season will appear. That is the life's cycle. Even the music, which represents harmony and joy, even the music also has to come to an end, right? So this is about the stanza number 3. And the last stanza, the stanza number 4, which talks about the virtuous soul. And the poet says, oh, only a sweet and virtuous soul, like seasoned timber never gives. Like seasoned timber never gives. So what does the poet say here? Unlike, unlike the day, rose, spring, a virtuous soul is eternal. The day also has to come to an end, right? Rose has to wither its beauty, spring season has to come an end, but the virtuous soul will always be remain permanent. So the poet compares the virtuous soul to a strong and seasoned wood that will never decay, that will never get weak. So, this is a metaphor here, and this metaphor implies that virtue is strong, resilient, it endures, and it has the enduring capacity beyond the physical destruction, right? So, a day may come to an end, a rose may die, spring may pass, but virtuous soul will always remain eternal, shashwat, permanent. So, this is the metaphor. And finally, what does the poet say here? But though the whole world turn to coal, then chiefly lives. This is a very important line. The poet says here, one day the entire world will be destroyed. The entire world will turn to ashes or coal. But what will continue to live on? A virtuous soul will continue to live on. Its life is not tied to the physical world. So in this stanza, the poet emphasizes that physical beauty and worldly pleasures, he says that physical beauty and worldly pleasures, they look good, but they are always temporary. So what is permanent here? Only and only a virtuous soul will remain permanent. Even the world is also get destroyed. Even the world may turn to ashes or may turn to the coal, but what will remain forever? What will remain forever here? A virtuous soul. So this is how the poet has used the concept of impermanence to highlight the value of a virtuous soul or the value of a virtuous life. So these are the four stanzas which we find here, where the poet talks about day, rose, spring, season, and the virtuous soul. So let's try to summarize very briefly here. George Herbert uses the examples from nature, day, rose, and spring, to show that all worldly beauty is temporary and subject to death. However, he contrasts this with the idea of a virtuous soul, which is eternal and lives on even after the physical world ends. So the poem encourages us to focus on cultivating inner virtue rather than relying on outward beauty or material pleasures. So this is a brief summary. So now, as I told that we are going to analyze the poem, so we'll try to find out here which are the important themes. Which are the important themes are here? The first theme we have here: transience of beauty in life. So the poet showcases the fleeting nature of worldly beauty, represented by the day, rose, and spring. Each stanza ends with a refrain, "and thou must die," which reinforces the inevitability of death, right? Eternal nature of virtue, the second theme. So, in contrast to the physical decay, the soul's virtue is portrayed as eternal, and the poet emphasizes the superiority of spiritual strength over the material beauty. Third theme: mortality versus immortality. So while nature's beauty is temporary, but the soul's virtue offers a pathway to the immortality. So these are the three important themes in the poem. I'm sorry, there's a spelling error, poem. I'm sorry for this. It should be poem. Then the last one, what do we find here? What do we find here? Structure and style. So the poem consists four quatrains, and each focusing on a different aspect of beauty or virtue. And the rhyming scheme we find here: AB, which creates a harmonious and musical quality. Then refrain. The refrain, what is refrain means repetition of a phrase, and must, thou must, and thou must die is repeated. Why? To emphasize the mortality. And finally, the tone is very reflective and meditative, which blends the admiration for beauty with a sober reminder of life's impermanence. So, friends, this is how I have tried to analyze the important poem Virtue by George Herbert. Hope you have liked this poem. Click on the like button, share this poem to your friends, and write in the comment box. Subscribe the channel if you have not yet done it. Stay connected with Mukesh English for the more videos on the syllabus of first semester BA General English under Bangalore University, and the new syllabus, that is SEP syllabus, which has started from the year 2024. Thank you so much.